BC football hasn't won a game since August, but even with 3 games left, I still see at least one more win out of Bill O'Brien's program.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day. I'm your host, AJ Black of Eagle Insider, part of the 247 Network. If you're looking for Boston College news, analysis, and details, you are in the right spot. Locked On Boston College is a free daily Boston College podcast available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. On today's show, basketball starts off and they lay a clunker. We're going to talk about how they played well and some of the new names look great, but major problems are facing the Eagles already. We'll talk about what EARL GRANT did and some of those issues with Donald Hand that might be something we need to worry about. Additionally, we're going to look at football today. 3 more games to go. BC sits at 1-8. I still think they have one more win left in them. I'll explain why. So today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. So let's kick it off with football. Football is 1-8. And are staring down their worst record in 30-plus years. If they do not win another game, this is going to go down as, and Bill O'Brien called it a memorable team, but not for the same reason, one of the worst outcomes that BC has ever had. But the last 2 weeks have shown me something out of Boston College. They've shown that A, they haven't quit, B, they're getting better at points, and C, I think they still have at least one more win in them. And here's why. Now, you got back Bam Crouch. That was a huge addition to your defense. You needed something in that linebacker group. Now, he only had 1 tackle, and he wasn't perfect. But what he does is make everyone better around him. For instance, when he was out, when Crouch was out, you had to put KP Price at linebacker at times. You were playing Bryce Steele for extended periods of time. You were throwing out other guys that, whether it was Zachary Thomas or Kamori Dixon, they just couldn't do it. And so having him back makes that defense better. I wonder if Amari Jackson will be back soon too, because earlier, a couple of weeks ago, Bill O'Brien said he's close to coming back. That'll make your defense even better. If your defense can improve enough, you can win a game. There's 3 games left. You're playing SMU, Georgia Tech, and Syracuse on the road. On paper, all those teams look better than you right now. But let's start with the least likely. Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech lost their first game of the season on Saturday to NC State. They looked very beatable in that game. I'm not going to say BC is anywhere near where NC State is, but they're not the perfect team that I thought they could be. I thought there was a chance they were going to get to Georgia at like 11-0, but they're they looked pedestrian, and their defense definitely looks suspect. Maybe you could surprise them. I think one piece that you need to look at is that some teams, I think Notre Dame might be a little guilty of this, overlook BC. They look at that record, they look at the struggles, they say to themselves, we can easily beat this team, and they might get caught. So a team like Georgia Tech, they're my least likely that you're going to win, but you never know. Now, interestingly, this weekend, SMU, talk about a letdown game coming, off of a major win. You just beat Miami, a top 10 team. You're feeling good. Now you go on the road to New England, play in 40-degree weather. It's going to be an evening game. It's afternoon game, but it's going to be cold. It's November. Could this be a game, especially if you get Crouch back, you get Jaden Skeet going? Maybe Grayson James is feeling a little better so that he can do some things, because he held his own against SMU last time. Maybe there's a win there. But the win that I think is going to happen, I'm not sure SMU would happen. I really don't think Georgia Tech will happen. Syracuse. Now, Syracuse just fired someone on their offensive staff. I think wide receiver coach, quarterback's coach. They moved a whole bunch of guys around because, Steve Angeli's hurt. Weeks, their quarterback, was not good. He was just not good. So they went to a walk-on who I think threw for 23 yards against UNC. Their offense is bad. And they're playing Miami this weekend, which will effectively knock them out of a bowl game. I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to say BC's a better team than Syracuse. I just think that's the case. I don't like their defense. BC's defense isn't great either, but BC has a much better quarterback, and I think their weapons are better. So I think Boston College could win the season finale. And honestly, it would be it would be so rich that I see the media still tripping over themselves for Fran Brown. That if he finishes this year, without his quarterback, but losing 2 straight to Bill O'Brien, that is funny because Fran Brown, all these hot boards seem to have him on it. I don't know what he's done other than tripping into Concord and then Angeli. That's credit to him for finding those 2 guys. I give him credit for that. But that I really do think. I think that would be, obviously if it's 2-10, that's not. I would not say I feel good going into the offseason after that. That still feels like ugh. But a little nice ending to at least it's it's a cherry on the turd Sunday, right? Like I feel like going against your local rival and beating them for the second year on the road would be one nice thing and at least give you something at the end of the year. And I think if BC stays healthy, that they could do that. Now, if they go out there and they start losing guys again from injuries, like if, this week Bam gets hurt or Q is out or, something happens to some of their wide receivers, all bets are off. Next year when I do my preseason predictions, I need to couch everything with as long as this team stays healthy because the injuries this year, it makes it unfair for my predictions to even come true. So I think that's my big bold prediction. I don't think 1-11 is going to happen. I think 2-10 is much more likely, and we'll have to see how that goes. Now, in a moment, let's talk some basketball, who already started the season off with their first dud of the season. We'll talk about what that looked like in just a moment. The NBA is back, and there's no better way to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sportsbook betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps games exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Celtics, they've always, with this new look on their roster, it's always a close game. Maybe you want to go with the money line. Maybe you want to go with the spread. Or you want to add that in with a parlay with points or, Jaylen Brown points in the game. You could do all that. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sportsbook betting partner of the NBA. Locked On Boston College, AJ Black here of Locked On BC and host of this great show. I want to shout out everyone, all my everydayers, everyone who's made Locked On Boston College part of your everyday routine. And for those who are first listeners, those are the people who you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh, I want to hear what AJ has to say on this, or I want to hear what AJ and Mitch are talking about today. Thank you all for all our first listeners as well. Now, let's talk basketball. I watched this game. BC basketball hurts my soul. It has for about 15 years now. And I went into the season with absolutely no expectations. I was just ready to get hurt again. I just knew that what this team was not enough to really be special. But I was curious to see if they were good enough to be feisty, to be scrappy and go in the right direction. Well, On Monday, the tip-off happened in Boca Raton, Florida, against FAU, and boy, does it seem like every other year, where you had everything that goes into a good old Earl Grant sandwich. You had a nice, spread of slow basketball to start the game. FAU comes out slow. BC says, "Hey, we'll go even slower," and the offense looks completely disjointed. They're not passing the ball. They're just playing hero ball. There's no flow to anything that they're doing, and they fall behind big. Then you get the Earl Grant. They come back. They were down by 12 at one point. They come back early second half, and they start looking better. They're playing well in the second half. You've got Bowden CAPG, who looks like I don't know where Earl Grant found him. I know he's a Butler, but he reminded me a little bit of Quentin Post. The way he could shoot outside threes, and he had 17 points off the bench. You got this guy out there draining threes, and you're feeling great. Like, you're like, oh, wow. They go up by 9, and then this little birdie in my head, I'll call him Mike Sidley, texts me and goes, watch what Earl Grant does at the end of the game. And, this is going to happen again. And this was dead on what I thought would happen. They're up by 9 with a couple minutes left. They let up a 3. They turn the ball over. They let up a 3. I don't think they turned it over again, but I think they went just, the offense was just completely disjointed. They're trying, instead of just running their offense, Earl Grant is much more concerned with draining the clock, and so the offense doesn't do much, and they get up another 3, and they're tied going into overtime. Once it got to overtime, FAU's gym is rocking. I'm like, this is over. We can play this. They can play overtime. BC's losing this game, and they lost this game. They fell behind in overtime. Again, Donald Hand hit a few shots down the stretch. Like, they didn't quit. That's the thing. They didn't quit, but they still weren't able to do much, and FAU looked like the better team. So this brings up my question. Earl Grant, on this show, I have been tough on Bill O'Brien at times, but you can quibble about some of the things he does, and you can not like some of the things he does. But I will argue that Earl Grant is much more active in causing BC basketball to lose games than Bill O'Brien is for football. When BC started to fall apart down the stretch, we got the highlight of every Earl Grant loss, which is their momentum just goes completely down the toilet, and he doesn't call timeout. He had a timeout. What is he doing? You could have used it to stem the momentum. You could have done that to call a play. You could have done it for a million different things. Instead, they just let it run, and the team fell apart. You had the ball with chances to continue to build that lead. You didn't call timeout, and everyone looked like they were lost. All that good mojo that they had going in that middle part of that game went right down the toilet. I thought, the second half, when you had, Forte looking good, Hand started to hit some shots, but you let it get away from you with the end of the game stuff. Now, we heard buzz of the second secret scrimmage against Brown, where apparently BC was up by like 5 or something like that with like 30 seconds left, and they blew that game. I'm worried about this. I don't think that Earl Grant is a great in-game coach. I'm not a basketball guru, so maybe more basketball heads can tell me that I'm wrong. That's fine. But as someone who watches the game, who enjoys basketball and can tell you what I see, it seems like the game gets away from him at the end of the second half. And this is not a first-time thing. This happens all the time. And when you don't have the guns to go out there and get a huge lead that you can, pad up and allow mistakes to happen and still not lose, you're going to lose games that you should have won. BC should have won last night. They should have won on Monday. Now they're at 0-1. And we're already just at the beginning of the year, and already the expectations have just went from, maybe they'll be scrappy, they'll be okay, to it's all gone again. If this continues all year, we're going to be watching lots of games. I'm already thinking to myself, if they do that kind of stuff, that's the kind of thing that gets them beat by Albany's, Tarleton State's, Dartmouth. Those are the type of things that cost you those games. FAU is not a bad team. When they had Dusty May a couple years ago, they made the Final Four, and this is a very different team. But BC did everything they needed to build up a lead. When you're up by 9 points, when you have that lead, according to ESPN, with 5 minutes left in this game, when you were up by 7 points, you had a 91.4% chance of winning this basketball game, and you still lost. I don't understand how this happens. Well, I mean, I do understand, but this was so disappointing because there was positives. There were things that we saw out of this basketball game where if they pulled this off, you're feeling good. You're feeling like, okay, we knew going into this game, FAU was not going to be easy. They were a 1.5 point dog, but you saw things that you were hoping for. The other issue, and because I'm going to save the last part for things that hopefully they can build on, was Donald Hand, who, believe me, by the end of the game, he was hitting shots that he needed to hit, and that was not a big issue. He had 20 points in the game. I think he was 1 for 8 going into halftime. But his free throw shooting, oh my gosh, what happened? He went 6 for 18 from free throw range. Sorry, not 6 for 18. Sorry, 6 for 13. He shot 46%. This is a guy that shot 85% from free throw range, from the free throw line last year. Now he's got this weird hitch, and I've heard that this is new. I've heard it's not new. I don't know. Whatever it is, it's causing him to really get all screwed up. And he's an aggressive player. He's gonna get to the line, and if he has lost, like, it feels like when you get the yips in baseball, you got a guy that just can't throw the ball to first base. I forget who was doing it a couple years ago. I think back to some of these guys, like was it Julian Tavares that had that? Like, it's like a whole mental thing. I'm really worried that this hitch thing that's going on with Donald Hand is become a mental thing. And this is going to cost them, because if he's aggressive and then can't shoot the free throws, what's going to stop other teams from just hacking him and making him just struggle at the line? That was really worrisome. And as a team, BC shot, what was there, 50% from the free throw line, compared to both teams shot free. It was a cacophony of just bad basketball points, because BC couldn't shoot free throws at one point. FAU, like, they're going to feel good about this game. They missed like 20 layups. Like, they could not anything near the rack. They were missing consistently. So BC got a little lucky there. But this free throw issue, it has me worried, because when you have a guy that's aggressive like Hand, who's going to get to that line, he's got to hit those. And this weird, like, he does this like it's like his motion is completely screwed up. Like, I don't know if you need like a psychologist to do that kind of stuff, like a sports psychologist. Sometimes they have that for like when guys get in slumps, all that kind of thing. Maybe that's what we need here, is like someone to help him get out of that zone, because other than that, he had a pretty good game. You need him to be better. Now, in our last segment, I'm going to tell you some positives I saw, and I'll give you my final thoughts on BC's opening loss to FAU. College football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel more like a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping out at checkpoint. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I use Game Time to get my family tickets to the BC UConn game. Yes, I know. I got them tickets, but I got 9 family members tickets the week before. I got them at a great deal. I got to see where I was sitting, and there were no extra fees, and it was delivered seamlessly to my phone. So with my Apple Wallet, boom, it was there. I got to BC. I got in. They got in so easily. I would recommend it to anyone. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket. Go download Game Time today. Wrapping things up here at Locked On Boston College, we're talking about the Boston College FAU game, and BC falls 83-78 in overtime on the road in Boca Raton. So I already went through how maddening that end of that game was with EARL GRANT not calling a timeout, EARL GRANT not changing anything that was going on out there, and BC falling apart late, and how just depressing it was. And I want to give you some of the positives, though. I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but BOWDEN CAPG, what a find this kid already looks like he's going to be. He shoots the three. Like Chad Venning was great last year. I thought he was probably one of the better players you had, but he didn't give you the deep threat that Quentin posted the year before. CAPG looks like he's got that. And that was a huge part of BC's offense a couple years ago, to have a stretch big that can do that, because Hastings not going to do that, is a big deal. And he hit, like, it was at one point he was hitting them all over the place. This is a guy you're going to play often. And he came off the bench. I don't know how long that's going to happen. I'm curious if they would go put Hastings at the 4. Shaw didn't give you much. He didn't do a whole lot out there. He had that big dunk, but I didn't really see a whole much out of him other than that. I wonder if you go with 2 bigs, like kind of what they did with Karnick and Quinton Post. And you put CAPG at the 5 and you put Hastings at the 4. I mean, you could do either. It doesn't really matter. And do that moving forward, because that might be your best. That might be your best lineup at this point. And unfortunately, we know how EARL GRANT can be at times. Hopefully, if that's the best case, that he finds that fast and not in February, because that seems like, I forget who it was that he did that a couple years ago before, but it was like, why is he still on the bench? So that's one positive. Another positive I saw out of this game, Jason Asamoto, I want to just mention him too. He only had 2 points, but he had, I think, 6 rebounds in this game, and definitely looked much more. He had 4 rebounds and a steal. He looked more involved than I expected him to be, so I want to say that. But CHASE FORTE, this is the other big one that I thought was really big. The first half, when BC's offense was not going, he really kept BC in this game. He finished the game with 14 points. He shot 5 of 12 from the floor. He had 4 assists, 2 steals. He really is the point guard of this team. Like, he is what you needed. Really what you needed. You compare what BC had this year versus last year. You had Deion Brown, right? Forte is leagues better than what you had in Deion Brown. So this was a nice get for BC. Like, he looks bigger. He looks strong. He looks like a guy out there. He doesn't look like a college kid. He looks like a guy. And I love the way he played. So those were some positives. I think Donald Hand, even he didn't have the greatest game consistently. But I saw him, like, once the game started getting, like, when EARL GRANT started to clench up, Hand was still the guy that kept you going. So I thought that was a positive too. And then Fred Payne, I should talk about Fred Payne a little bit. He had 8 points as well. He played 40 minutes. He didn't come off the floor. 40 minutes out of Fred Payne, which is crazy because, he had that foot injury or a knee injury a couple of years ago. He slowly came back. I think he was on the bench for most of last year, coming off the bench. He played a full game today. And he didn't play the full game because obviously there was overtime too. And he took a rest, but 40 minutes, that's crazy. So Again, a loss is a loss. It was. I don't know what to tell you, folks. Like you needed a win. You really needed a win. You didn't get it. So it goes on from here. Next game for BC is going to be at home on Thursday, I believe, against the Citadel. So that's coming up. We'll have to wait to see if how they respond to that. Now on tomorrow's show, we'll talk more about SMU and BC. We're going to be doing a crossover with Locked On SMU, a brand new show. They have a great host. I'm going to be doing that with them on Thursday, so hopefully you enjoy that. And then Mitch will be on Friday. So we have a packed week again. So make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247, and I'll see you all again soon for another episode of Locked On Boston College, your team every day.